The Lifestylist, Episode 195.
I'm Luke Story. For the past 22 years, I've been relentlessly committed to my deepest passion, designing the ultimate lifestyle based on the most powerful principles of spirituality, health, psychology, and personal development. The Lifestylist Podcast is a show dedicated to sharing my discoveries and the experts behind them with you. If you are intrigued, as I'm sure you will be, by the device that we talk about in this episode, the BioCharger, I'd love to invite you over to biocharger.com/Luke, where you can learn more about it. And I've even talked our guests, Jim and Jim, into giving you a $500 discount if you were to purchase one. I always try to do that when we have guests on the show. If they want to promote something and I'm interested in something they do, I'm like, yo, kick down the discount. So go to biocharger.com/Luke and use the code Luke at checkout to save $500 off your BioCharger. One of the coolest things about my job as the host of the Lifestylist Podcast is always being on the cutting edge and not only finding out the best products when it comes to health, but the best companies that are making those products. Now, I'm someone that's been into bee products for a really long time. And if you heard episode 175 with Carly Stein, you got to hear me totally geek out on my obsession with bees and bee products. If you haven't heard that one, by the way, go back and check it out. That's 175. But what I didn't know about bee products is A, how many different products bees actually make in a hive, what their different uses are in terms of health support, and also that there are just a lot of companies that are making products that are very inferior. Either they're weak or they're not tested for pesticides and things like that. So the whole bee product game, I thought I was pretty on top of, and I got schooled in that episode, and now I'm going back and kind of re-educating myself, and I'm using all of the products from Beekeepers Naturals. So they've got a few that I'm really into. There's the propolis, which is kind of like the medicine of the hive. Then you've got, of course, the bee pollen, which is the food. That's the protein. It's actually the highest protein food on the planet, and it's also got free-forming amino acids. So it's great for pre-workout, for muscle recovery. And then, of course, the raw honey, which is amazing. And I thought I knew something about honey. It's got live enzymes. You know, if you take a little bit before you go to bed, it helps you sleep. There's some things like that. But it turns out honey is a legit superfood if you get it from the right company. It's full of antioxidants, and it's just insanely powerful. Then you've got royal jelly. Now, royal jelly is the chronic stuff. That's the food that's exclusively made for the queen bee. So the queen bee lives about 40 times longer than the average worker bee. So put the math together there, and you'll know that royal jelly is some badass stuff. And if you want to try all of these products that the bees make in one, I'm going to recommend Bee Powered by Beekeepers Naturals. That's one of my favorites. Now, honestly, I go through it a little too fast. It comes in a jar, and I just pound that stuff. I probably way OD on it. You don't need to do it like I do it. You can savor it and make it last, but it's an amazing product and a really great way for you to get an introduction into all of the bee products in one jar. So go to beekeepersnaturals.com, use the code LIFESTYLIST and save 15%. That's beekeepersnaturals.com, and the code is LIFESTYLIST. All right, here's the deal, guys. I've been into the health and wellness scene for 22 plus years now. I've seen a lot of different supplements come and go, a lot of different devices and modalities come and go. One that I found last year in 2017, I feel is never going to go, and that's called red light therapy or photobiomodulation. You can go back to episode number 169 of the Lifestylist Podcast and learn all about it, where I interview the founders of Joovv. Not just about the Joovv products that I'm going to tell you about right now, but just about this therapy altogether. There are thousands of clinical studies on red light therapy. So if you're serious about your health, it's hard to ignore that research and hard science. This is not woo-woo stuff. I'm into some woo-woo stuff. Nothing wrong with that. But this is seriously effective treatment. Okay, so whether you're trying to improve your skin, reduce joint pain, get better sleep, or really improve your testosterone production, which has been one of the major benefits for me, then red light therapy with the Joovv is going to be a major investment in your health. Now, I use my Joovv religiously, but I really miss it when I travel. I mean, the thing's like 5 feet tall or something, so it sits here in my office when I'm gone, and I really miss it. I want to hug my Joovv. So that's why I'm super pumped about their new handheld device. It's called the Joovv Go, and it gives you all the same Joovv red light power, but it fits in the palm of your hand, so you can take it anywhere. And you can also kind of use it, spot use it, like in certain areas. Like for guys, I'll just give you a little hint. If you're trying to raise your testosterone, you use it down in the nether regions. I know it sounds weird, but that's what a lot of the science is actually about. So to check out the Joovv units, whether it's the modular ones like I have or the handheld, all you have to do is head over to joovv.com/Luke. That's JOOVV.com/Luke. And once you're over there, you're going to see a special bonus the Joovv team is hooking you up with if you're a listener. So just use the code Luke at checkout and you're going to get a free gift. So that's joovv.com/Luke and use the code Luke at checkout. Welcome one and welcome all. You're back at the Lifestylist Podcast. I'd like to invite you to pull up a chair, order a drink, perhaps a green juice or herbal elixir of sorts. We like to keep it clean here on the show. No, seriously, get wasted and listen. I don't care. As long as you're having fun and learning something, it's all you. Point is, we are having a party here. My name is Luke Story. You can find out just about everything there is to know about me at lukestory.com. And if you want to find out about today's guest, Biocharger with Jim and Jim, you can find that at lukestory.com/store, where I highlight all of the best biohacking and natural healing technologies, supplements, herbs, everything you could ever want to gain energy and to stay well. So go to lukestory.com/store to find that. If you want to come to the events that I'm hosting or participating in, you can always find those at lukestory.com/store. In fact, I've got one coming up April 11th at the Soho Houses, Little Beach, Malibu. That's April 11th in Malibu, California. If you'd like to get the show notes for every single episode delivered directly to your email for free, complete with all of the links and bullet points that we discuss in every single interview, you can go to lukestory.com/newsletter. That's lukestory.com/newsletter. Now, if you do that right now, if you pause this episode and go to that URL, you will get the notes and links from this Friday's bonus show, a bootleg broadcast of yours truly live at Neil Strauss's Society, where I talk about the ultimate morning routine. And then Tuesday, I'll email you Beast Mode, Badass Bones and Massive Muscles with Dr. John Jaquish. So that's how this goes. Now, if you sign up today, you're not going to get the notes from this show because it already came out. You see what I'm saying? But seriously, sign up to my newsletter. I'm very respectful. I will never, ever, ever share your information with anyone. I don't email you a bunch of weird emails. It's usually once a week saying, hey, this is what the podcast is about. Here's all the links we talk about in the show. It's pretty cool. So you can find that over there. Now, this episode with Jim Squared, Jim Girard and Jim Law from Biocharger was recorded live at Tony Robbins Date with Destiny. I was out there. I was super tired. I mean, this is an event that, it just smokes you. Tony's not real big on sleep. I think it's part of the part of the persuasion tactics. I mean that in the most positive sense. Oftentimes, if you're trying to get to the subconscious mind, sleeplessness is a good way to do that, and that's what Tony Robbins events are largely about. So I had a great time. I'll do a recap on that at some point. But right now, the recap was go to Date with Destiny. It's freaking amazing. I'm a changed man as a result. But I was really tired. And I think it was maybe the first or the second day, I walked around the side of the corridor there in the event space, and I see this bank of biochargers, these fantastic devices. I have one sitting behind me. It's about 2 or 3 feet tall, makes crazy noises, crazy lights. It looks like it's from freaking outer space, which it kind of is. It's very cosmic. And I've used these things before in LA and I love them. I just haven't had a chance to track them down. I find out about so many different technologies and I interview so many people on the show. This was kind of on my list and I would get around to it when I found the people behind it. And lo and behold, Jim and Jim were there on site. So I'm using this thing like 3 to 4 times a day. I swear to God, it's the only thing that got me through that event with the amount of sleep and food deprivation that was taking place. So I'm at their booth, just bugging them every day. And finally I thought, you know what? I have my recording gear in my hotel. I'm going to bring it in and record these guys. And they were gracious enough to come on the show, sight unseen. So we sort of snuck into the hotel next door and went into the pool area and had a fantastic conversation. Jim Girard began experimenting based on the works of Tesla, Lakhovsky, and Rife in 1988. And he developed an early version of the BioCharger in 1993. And then in 2013 was approached by Jim Law, the other Jim, and Colin Bester to form Advanced Biotechnologies LLC, where he is now part of the research and development team. And then Jim Law has served as CEO since co-founding the firm in 2013. So these guys have been at the game for a long time. And, Jim Law is kind of more of the practical sort of CEO, the voice of the company and all of that. And then Jim Girard is like the super techie dude that, is the guy that like Jim has to translate for, basically. Very brilliant and fun guys. So what we talk about in this episode is how Jim Girard was trained under a student of Nikola Tesla, how what is old is new again, how Jim learned to build these mind-boggling machines using technology that dates back to the late 1800s, the key elements of Tesla's technology that BioCharger uses today, how noble gases create the wild look of the BioCharger, and how stimulating those gases become when amplified by the Tesla coil. The difference between BioCharger and other technologies that use only part of the light and frequency spectrum, such as red light therapy or other PEMF devices. The fact that people think nutrition and fitness is the key to health, but underlying all of that is voltage. How we've created a society riddled with chronic disease and how we can change it. The before and after testing these guys have done to verify the effects BioCharger has on the human body. How different BioCharger recipes can be used to treat specific problems or create certain results in the human body, from treating chronic disease to opening up your third eye, one of my favorite practices, using the BioCharger to enhance meditation, and finally, Jim Girard's perspective on EMFs. Maybe it's not the end of the world. And that was a really fascinating part of the conversation because I'm freaking terrified of 5G and all these EMFs going on. And I think it's really bad news. And Jim was kind of like, nah, it's no big deal. So, it's one of the first times a guest has ever really said something that shocked me, I think, where I'm like, really? You're a really smart guy. And there's a lot of seeming scientific evidence to the contrary of your opinion. But that's what's great about having a show. You can let everyone speak their mind. So you definitely want to hear his take on the EMF thing. If you're someone who's super paranoid about it like me, you might loosen up a little bit and relax. But more than anything, I'm just thrilled, as usual, to provide you guys with some information on some really cutting edge technology. As I said, I have one sitting behind me here. Just moved into a new house. I have a little guest house / cottage in the back. I'm going to make into a meditation center / man cave / studio / biohacking lab. And the human charger is going to be sitting right in the damn middle of that room. I'm going to be adding it to the slew of other devices that I use on a daily basis. I love this thing. I haven't used it to treat any chronic issues in myself so far, but I use it to meditate every single day, twice a day. And this thing puts me in the most far out Zen place. And I also use it if I'm really tired and I didn't sleep enough and I'm just smoked. It charges you up and gives you so much energy. It's madness. I love stuff like this. So I'm super stoked to present to you Jim Law and Jim Girard from BioCharger. Welcome to the Lifestylist Podcast, Jim and Jim. It's the first time, guys, I've ever interviewed two guys named Jim. So the audience is going to learn your voice according to who you are. So we've got Jim Law and Jim Girard. You guys are from BioCharger. And just to give the audience a little backstory here. So we're here at Date with Destiny in Florida with Tony Robbins. I'm just having my mind blown already, but real tired because of the hours he keeps. I respect that he's a night person. I am too. But when we're getting home at 4:30 in the morning and coming back at 10:30, it's pretty taxing. So I walk in on day 2 and I see this field of biochargers, and it's a technology that I've used before and I love. So I was super stoked and actually had my friend FedEx my podcast recording gear out here from LA so that I could catch you guys. So thank you for making the time. I'm sure you have eager customers inside going, wait, where are they? Here they are.
Glad to be here.
So first thing is, how did you two guys meet up in the first place?
Well, it's kind of an interesting story. My background's more in high technology. I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur, had a couple of startups. And in around 2010, Jim and I got to know each other because our kids played football in high school together.
Oh, really?
And out of Massachusetts. And I had just finished up a transaction where we sold a company off to Siemens. I was kind of looking for, they say idle time is the devil's playground. So I was looking for my next adventure. My son would say, you should go over and see what Mr. Girard's doing. The other day I went over and there was like these sparks 10 feet long shooting out of his garage, but he makes this machine. And so I kind of envisioned, and got to know Jim on the sidelines at games and whatnot, but learned pretty quickly that he had spent many years studying the technologies that were underneath a lot of the electrotherapies that were progressively being introduced as much as 100 years ago that were being very, very effective. So a lot of people have heard of Royal Rife or obviously Nikola Tesla. Jim was fascinated by those and had started a company and was actually selling a much different version of the biocharger than we have today. But Jim, why don't you tell a little bit more about it?
Yeah. So my story began in the late 80s. Went to the Acres Convention, was introduced to the works of Nikola Tesla, and met a couple people while I was at this conference that helped me through my journey of meeting different people. So a good friend of mine introduced me to a guy named Dr. Orville Fitz, who was a student of Tesla. He was an old guy. He was in his mid-80s.
Cool.
And I got a long phone conversations with him, and he finally convinced him, let me go out and hang out with him for a while. So I get to spend about 6 months down in Houston, Texas, just reading and pouring through all this information that he had. He didn't get to spend a lot of time because he was in his mid-80s. So there were days when he was tired and didn't really feel like doing a lot of stuff, but he had an enormous library of information that was very helpful. And then when I came back home, just started experimenting and playing around with all sizes of Tesla coils. I experimented with, shooting the big sparks, building the big diameter coils. And at the same time, I came across Lakhovsky's work and Royal Rife's work and became interested in building some of those devices. And, back in the day, in the late 80s, there were people who were building multi-wave oscillators, but they weren't really building them the way George Lakhovsky was building it. They were using modified ignition coils out of cars and not getting any sparks, and just had these they just weren't doing it at all the way it was supposed to be done. So I started building things more based off of the original works. And, I had friends just coming by, hanging out, and, suddenly a bunch of people started coming by. Other people were using it for various things that was helping them. And then early 90s, I went out to Montana, and it was a pretty progressive area where I was living. And they all knew about Nikola Tesla, Royal Rife, and was fascinated with some of the stuff that I was bringing into town. And that's when things started to really take off. I started selling biochargers. They convinced me to start making them. So I was building these based off of the old spark gap design and was very successful at it. And things were growing. And through the years, I kept on evolving it. 2010, 2011, went to the vacuum tube Tesla coils. So I went from the 1890s now into the 1920s with technology. And then about that time is when Jim and I started getting hooked up. And he's like, let's look at this a completely different way. What would Tesla do if he had the 21st century and all the technologies available? So we sat down from that point, really started to look at the technology, understanding what works, trying to figure out what the special sauce was, and then applied it to the 21st century with, going to digital design instead of solid state design, which allows for complete control of the waveforms that we wanted to generate. So it's been quite a path, and an exciting path. And right now, this biocharger that we're using right now, it's just amazing to hear all the different responses that we have from people that are experiencing benefits from it. And, you're seeing a little bit here at the show where, you see the lines. First day there's a few people, next day, and now the lines are out the doors and every seat's filled up.
Yeah,
people are excited to try it.
And it's, because we're here at the conference, it's free to use. But it reminds me of, back in the day when I lived in Hollywood and there'd be drug dealers on certain corners. And the first night you'd see that guy looks a little shady, and then there'd be like more and more people kind of hanging out. So this is a healthy drug that we've got, and I'm super hooked. I've got to say, subjectively, too, and I'm sure I'll talk about some of this in the intro when I record that later, but I'm pretty sensitive to different technologies. I use a lot of this stuff that we now call biohacking. We used to call alternative health devices or whatever, and I take tons of crazy supplements and shoot myself up with all kinds of shit. I mean, I'm just nuts in terms of health. I'm quite obsessive. I've learned a lot about the origin of where that comes from actually this week in the summer.
There you go.
It's called controlling your environment to have certainty, but that's another conversation. I said all that to say, dude, when I come and sit in front of this thing for 15 minutes, I feel the feeling you can't deny the energy that this thing's putting out. And you sort of, when I close my eyes, it's like I see sparkles and lights, and it's quantifiable in terms of sitting there. But the net effect seems to hit me about an hour later. And even though I've had no sleep, which normally just crushes me, I've done 2 sessions today, and I feel like I got the best night's sleep ever. Mm-hmm. And I didn't do anything different in terms of my other routines. I mean, I took all my same supplements and shit this morning to try to recover from the lack of sleep. So whatever you guys are on to.
You've been affected by one of the 4 side effects of the BioCharger.
The energy and recovery?
And deeper stage of sleep, more energy, better clarity, and a heightened sense of cognitive awareness.
Right.
Those are the side effects.
That's why I need to use this shit every time I record a podcast. I'm like, this is perfect. I actually feel so sharp despite, how tweaked I was feeling earlier. So Jim Girard, when I have spoken to you over this last few days and picked your brain about the technologies and stuff, I make it about 5 minutes in, and then it's just like, just totally goes over my head. So you seem like a deeply scientific guy. And I want to say and I use this term in the most kind way, but you're like a super geek. Like you're very smart. So it's a compliment. Did you have a background in engineering? Were you the kid like in, science class that stayed, over and worked with your professor? And like, when did your love of technology and your ability to actually build these things? Are you in engineering, or how do you know how to do this shit?
My background is applied math, but growing up, it was a good balance for me because as a youngster, I raced go-karts. We did our own engine building. We built our own cars. We did a lot of building projects. Whenever my dad would want to do anything, it was always, we did it together. So there was a lot of hands-on. So from a guy that has a lot of theoretical background in mathematics, it's good to be able to do a lot of hands-on things. But it wasn't really until after... Well, I mean, throughout college, I had a landscaping company and I'd build my own trailers. I did my own engine work. I did a lot of stuff by hand. So when I came across Tesla's work, it was just a natural extension of let's just try to build anything to make it work. That's where a lot of it really started to drive. And just reading some of the stuff that Tesla was actually able to accomplish, all the writings and the stories and the folklores, that's where really the inspiration comes. It wasn't really, I don't really consider it that much my idea as their idea, expanding a little bit on their idea, but they're the ones that really laid out the kernel. So it was just for anyone who was willing to make an effort.
Right. So you're talking about technologies that go back, as you said, to the, late 1800s into the 1920s. And it's funny though, because when you look at a device like this, it looks like something out of the future, and it's crazy. I mean, and as you said, other than the digital component and being able to really dial in the frequencies that you're working with, I mean, this is old stuff. So some people know a little bit of the background of Henry Ford and Tesla or whoever it was that, suppressed his information. And, I don't know, there might be mystery about how he left the planet, et cetera. Have you guys together or before encountered any sort of forces that want to suppress the technology you're working on, or anyone trying to intervene or mess with you because they don't like this type of technology being accessible to people?
Yeah, well, it's kind of interesting for me because I've been more of a business guy, high tech, coming into this. And when I first saw, Jim's latest quote unquote version of the BioCharger, I mean, it was like, he reminded me, you talk about Back to the Future. He was Doc in Back to the Future.
Right, that's what I'm envisioning, like in his garage, with sparks flying everywhere and stuff. It's fascinating.
And at first, it was really hard for me to even make that connection that there's really something going on here. I mean, it's more of a practical guy, but we started talking more and more, and I said, well, would you mind if I spoke with some of your customers? And I would call these people, and they'd say, well, the thing showed up and it was in pieces, and my cat got shocked, and and I got shocked, or it broke and I had to send it back. And I say, so this wasn't a good experience. They say, oh no, this was amazing, and we loved the BioCharger. And so we knew that there was really something there, but to your point, it was very antiquated technology. I mean, the newest components were probably 50 to 60 years old. So, as Jim mentioned earlier, we were very careful about making sure that we didn't lose the special sauce. But what we really envisioned was the ability to make it a platform. And so aside from moving it forward and redesigning the system completely from a point where, we now have developed the cloud infrastructure, we've now got the ability to have people around the world that are way smarter than we are and understand frequency healing much better than we'll ever understand it, are able to use the BioCharger platform to create new recipes, which are what we call these frequency and energy programs for a very specific desired outcome. And when that happens, you get this community effect. And the cloud has enabled all these community-inspired recipes where when we originally released the first version of the new BioCharger, we call it the NG for next generation, we had about 10 of these recipes. We now have over 650 and growing. And it's hard to think of a condition or an outcome that you would like that we haven't thought of something already for, that don't have a recipe for already. And that's kind of been the magic of it, because now every client of ours around the world, we're in 18 countries outside the US, all have access to the cloud. And when a new recipe is developed, we had one just recently for Lyme, which is epidemic in the Northeast. And it was actually a Swedish doctor that did a very intense study and found that certain frequencies could actually have a tremendous positive effect. And once we vetted that, which we do with all of them to make sure that they fit within guidelines, we were able to share that. That's our number one download now.
Wow, I bet.
I bet. To watch, and it's just, first off, to have Tony be one of our clients and have helped him and, to have him feel strongly enough about it, to have us at all his events around the world now and be able to offer it to other people is amazing. And we're in the NFL and Major League Baseball and the World Surf League. I mean, we've got, a really nice following, building, but the people here that are just want to get the most out of their day and want to, get their mojo. I mean, one thing in common at all of these events is people are looking to improve. And this is just another tool to help them do that.
Well, as I said, I'd used it before. My buddy Hari in Los Angeles, he's like Sikh Kundalini chiropractor, biohacker. He finds that stuff way before me in many cases, and he turned me on to this, and I was like, oh, this is legit, and I used it, and I like the effect. But when I saw it here and thought about, obviously Tony Robbins can have any freaking brand he wants in here, but there's really nothing else going on. You can go buy some juice or some freaking pretzels, or you can come see you guys. So that is a pretty powerful testament. So I'm sure, obviously, he could be monetizing this entire thing and have booths all over with people doing what you do. So that's pretty cool. I want to back up a little bit just to give people a little more perspective. So if this is possible, Jim, in a concise way, and I know there's a lot to each of these, but what did Tesla do? Like, what was the technology piece that you adopted from him specifically for this particular device?
Sure. So the key with the Tesla coils, it generates frequencies and harmonics. So this frequencies and harmonics will span AM, FM, shortwave, longwave, UHF, VHF, microwaves, all the way up gigahertz range, all the way up to visible light. And that's something that exists naturally from cosmic energy. So from all the planets, solar systems, and galaxies that are spinning around, they're producing all these different frequencies and harmonics that go all the way up to visible light and beyond. So what the Tesla coil, the beauty of it is you can generate those spectrums of frequencies across that whole spectrum. And with the newest version that we have now, we can actually vary those harmonics and frequencies, whereas the original set with the spark gap design would only generate the one set of harmonics. And the idea that Lakhovsky theorized that each cell acts like a one-band radio receiver, much like your car. So if I set my car radio station at 95.1, I only pick up one station, that's it. Even though I could be in a large city like Los Angeles, where there's thousands of radio stations being broadcast, car radio only picks up one station. Well, your cell's the same way.
Does each cell pick up a different?
Yeah, each one.
Different frequency?
Yeah, so it's not even so much it picks up a different frequency, but if you look at on a cellular structure, you have this RNA DNA that goes across the diameter of the cell. That RNA DNA, the function is almost like a helix coil. So it's a particular wavelength that's associated with it. So it's really the inherent design of the cell that has that particular wavelength. It has frequency, capacitance, voltage, reactance. So it's just like this little antenna looking for its particular frequency to receive. So what we try to do is generate as many harmonics and frequencies to stimulate each and every cell simultaneously with their own specific frequency that they're looking for. The limitations of a Tesla coil is it only generates segments of that entire spectrum. So if you look at the spectrum from zero to visible light, is literally quadrillions of frequencies. And so a typical a Tesla coil will only generate hundreds of thousands of harmonics. So hundreds of thousands may sound like a lot, but in a sea of quadrillions of frequencies, it's a spit in a bucket. So what we try to do with recipes is we try to fill in that spectrum of frequencies. And by being able to vary it in a way in which the new biocharger does, we're able to basically virtually generate any harmonic or frequency we want. That's really the special sauce of what really Tesla was all about. And we see it in nature. He was really mimicking nature. You see lightning discharges that happen 100 times a second. And each lightning discharge is a different, unique set of harmonics and frequencies that span that whole spectrum. And it's constantly changing. And it's an essential part of life. And that's the things that we're really missing in our modern lifestyle. We're in the buildings that are shielded with if it's a cement building with rebar and it's basically a big Faraday cage. So we're not receiving that natural energy. We're not getting that light component. So one of the aspects of the biocharger produces a visible light, and not like the light from sunlight, but from light when you look at the blue in the sky and you see that's as a result of all these gases that are being excited to fluorescent that release photons of light. It quadrillion times a second that it's pulsing at. Those are the types of frequencies that we're trying to generate. That's a very natural way of what nature is providing us that we don't get in our modern lifestyle.
Yeah, it's interesting. For those of you listening, I wasn't prepared for this, so I don't have my video camera. Normally, I would, do some B-roll of the device in action so people could watch it on YouTube, but I will put some photos of it in the blog post that is associated with this at lukestory.com. You just click on the podcast tab, you'll be able to find this episode once it's published. But it's a fascinating thing to look at because there's these vials of what look like lights, but as you were describing earlier, those are in fact noble gases of all of these different elements that go around the center of this coil. So what's up with what is a noble gas and how does that relate to light and what does that do for you?
Yeah, so those noble gases actually exist in atmosphere.
Okay.
And what we're trying to do is you excite those with the Tesla coil, much like the solar radiation excites the gases. And what happens is, like, for instance, neon. Neon exists in a pair naturally. So when you excite it, they separate this pair for just a brief moment in time, and then it recombines. And what recombines, it releases a photon of light. And that's the type of light that, is what we live for as far as that. It's not the sunlight, which is a little bit different than the excitation of gases.
Oh, interesting. This stuff's so trippy. I'm like, how do I keep this at an hour? I'm like, I could just go into that for an hour. It's just so fascinating. I think one of the things that's cool about this and why I resonate with it is because you're using the principles of nature, and sure. As you said, Nikola Tesla was just going, there are these powerful elements in nature that man has the intelligence to harness and make directional, right? And make it so that it's usable intentionally rather than just being environmentally exposed to it, right?
Well, it's one of the things that's also pretty interesting is a lot of people are familiar with cold laser or red light therapy or even infrared.
Both of those. Yeah, all three of those.
Those are all a subset in the visible light spectrum that we're able to produce with the biocharger. But also, if you take a look at those plasma tubes, you'll see that there's no wiring, no electrical system, and most other systems are not using, to the point where you're talking about nature. We're exciting those gases the exact same way they're excited in nature, which is much purer form, at least in our belief.
So they're, relating it back to the sun and the biosphere. So when you see a rainbow, it has very similar colors to the colors that are in your noble gases. So what's happening there as the sun reacts to those different spectrums of light?
Well, from a sun perspective, they're just exciting those gases. So what creates that
the gases
rainbow
exist in the atmosphere.
Yes.
And then they get excited by solar radiation. The gases that are in the atmosphere get excited by solar radiation and then create these different spectrums of light or photons.
Photons of light, yep.
Photons of light that interact with our eyes and skin and bodies and biology.
Yeah, and if you looked at all those gases, so we have 6 different types of gases that are within the bulbs there. And if you look at those gases and they're in the atmosphere existing naturally, if you mix them all together, they would produce that same blue sky that you would be looking at up there. We separate them to give you the visual distinction between the different colors that are generated. But if you mix them all together, did the same thing, it would still produce that same spectrum of frequencies, but it would just be one color of blue versus breaking them all up.
Oh, interesting. God, that's so cool. And one of the questions I wanted to get to, and then I'm going to retroactively go back and talk about a couple of these other early pioneers, Rife, et cetera. So Jim Law, you started to talk about these spectrums of light that some other technologies, such as, one that I'm a huge fan of is the Juve red light therapy, which uses, I think, far and near infrared light. And then I've got my clear light sauna, which is it's a full spectrum, I guess, uses near, mid, and far. And then you mentioned the cold lasers. I also have a Power Medic cold laser, which is amazing for healing wounds and ligaments and tennis elbow. I mean, so I'm very much a fan of the light, but they all seem to fall in sort of the red category. So for the audience that is going to later email me and be like, what's the difference between the BioCharger and a sauna or the Juve red light thing or a laser? Can you give me kind of the fundamental differences in the way that your devices use light?
Sure. And maybe I can give a short answer and Jim can do a deep dive. He can do that. So first of all, what the BioCharger is doing that's unique holistically is generating, creating 4 types of energy that mimic nature and are the natural forms of energy that allows us to get cellular voltage. And that's really important because as most people think about nutrition and fitness as being keys to health, underlying that is voltage. Because if you think about, we're made up of cells. So it being, light being one of the 4 types of energy that we produce, it having a wider, broader sense of visible light spectrum gives you a broader benefit for light because light is life. And, people associate it with vitamin D and what's really happening, but it really kind of translates into cellular voltage in a way. And the other 3 types of energy do as well. But if we take a step back and say, why do we need cellular voltage? What's the significance of it? Well, first of all, most of us know that, if you flatline, you're not alive anymore. So it's all about voltage. Or if something happened and someone went into cardiac arrest, the first thing the EMTs would do would be come in and hit you with high voltage, which, brings you back to life. So, there's no doubt that we're not driven by electricity. And there's a great book called Voltage is Healing by Dr. Jerry Tennant, where he went into great depth and study around what is happening with chronic disease. And it turned out that, today, as a matter of fact, I think it's around 45% of Americans, 133 million Americans, have at least one form of chronic disease. And what he discovered was that one common characteristic of all chronic disease was inadequate cellular voltage. And then he went back and kind of looked at, what are the reasons behind that? What are the consequences of that? And, because our cell's 70% water can't absorb oxygen, which is the nutrient to the cell, without the presence of voltage. If you can increase the voltage, you can increase the absorption of nutrients. And not only that, but you can deal with toxicity at the cellular level. And when you're able to do that and you get the optimal voltage, and that's, from a metric standpoint, it's minus 25 millivolts is a healthy cell. To make a new cell, it's minus 50 millivolts. And if you have that adequate voltage to do that, your body will function properly. Your uptake of nutrients is improved. Detoxification, you start to eliminate free radicals and oxidative stress in the cell. You boost ATP production, and then that, in a way, supercharges the mitochondria to make new perfect cells. And that's kind of the whole premise by which we believe that a lot of the chronic disease has occurred because we're not exposed. We're living in a shielded world. We, even when we're outside, we're slathered in block and covered up. We're walking around with insulated feet. We're not getting any of these natural forms of energy. So what he found was that a common characteristic of all, I mentioned this earlier, chronic disease, all chronic disease is inadequate cellular voltage. But he also found that the body heals itself by making new cells that work perfectly. And the gut, leaky gut is a pretty popular topic now. And most people don't realize, but the lining of your gut is replaced every 6 days. The skin that we're sitting in right now is replaced every 6 weeks. Our liver's replaced, entirely regenerated every 8 weeks. So it's about having the ability to make new cells that work properly. And when you're able to do that, your body does the rest, if that makes sense. So
that
light
makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and light is one of those sources, but also PEMF, pulse electromagnetic fields, which there are many systems out. A lot of people are familiar with the Beamer or IMRS 2000 or a plethora of other systems that are out there. But we looked at those and realized, we want to incorporate that into the biocharger. It's a natural source of energy. It helps with vibration. It helps with focusing on different areas. But why not bathe the whole body with it? And why should people have to be holding electrodes or having to, spend a extended period of time on a mat or something like that when within about 10 to 15 minutes, we can bathe their body with such a high enough concentration of those PEMF fields using a broad range of spectrum of frequency that now allows your body to get the full benefit. So the third type energy, the frequency, we call it radio-based frequencies and harmonics, that's a la Rife. And that's,
okay, that's what I wanted to get to next.
Yeah, and Jim can do the deep dive on that, but he was able to first develop a microscope in the early 1900s, which was the first microscope that could high-powered microscope that could look at living organisms. It wasn't until about a decade ago that we were able to make a more powerful microscope than he created 100 years ago.
Wow.
But what he did with that was began to study the effect of frequencies on all types of organisms. And so now, it's pretty common knowledge that there are, definite effects of different frequencies to different parts of the body, different organisms, bacteria, etc. So the ability to control those frequencies in such a way that, we have a general wellness aspect of it. And just by raising your cellular voltage and resonating with all your cells, that has the general wellness effect. But then when we can, on top of that, through these recipes, hone in on very specific frequencies that target different areas, you kind of get the best of both worlds. The fourth type energy, the high voltage piece, which we talked about a little bit before, but there's some very interesting studies that we can refer to if people want to come to our website or ask, or we can provide it to you. Medical studies that showed that the effects of high voltage on the cell membrane and that a healthy human cell could actually withstand over 1 million volts, applying that energy directly to a cell membrane. If you took an unhealthy cell or a mutant cell or a pathogen in just a few 100,000 volts, it would actually destroy the cell. By the way, when you could apply that voltage to a healthy cell, it electroporates and allows energy in. They then did a second study to see if you could produce the same effect without having physical contact with the cell membrane and instead using air as a conductor. And that's what we're actually doing. So that kind of along the same lines of using PEMF, and instead of focusing on one area by having a physical contact with something, bathing your whole body with it, we're able to do the same thing with the high voltage. And, that's why most people, like yourself, notice things. And when I was kidding earlier about the side effects, we were so used to hearing about the 10% of the effects of any drug that are good, and then the 90% that are not good. And so people will associate side effects with, being negative. The biocharger is the one exception I know of.
We'll be right back at you after this brief but important announcement. All right, folks, I'm about to bust out one of my secrets here. You ready for this? People often wonder how I'm able to record sometimes 3 or 4 podcasts in one day and stream them all on social media and do all of the crazy things I do. If you follow me on Instagram, my life is quite busy and somehow I managed to keep it together. Well, my secret weapon, or at least one of them, is the Four Sigmatic Lion's Mane coffee. Now, I don't always have time to brew up some whole beans, put them in the French press, put the butter in there, do the whole thing, make myself that fatty kind of elixir. But what I do always have time for is to bust out one of the little Lion's Mane coffee packets from Four Sigmatic, throw that in some hot water, even sometimes when I'm like in a rush and just need to make things happen, some cold water, shake it up, stir it up, blend it up, and I'm good to go. Now, what's cool about the Lion's Mane coffee is that it's an instant coffee, but it doesn't have any of the toxins of like your grandma's like Folgers instant coffee. By the way, don't ever eat that stuff. Super, super toxic. Instant coffees are generally really bad for you, but not this one. What's really cool about the Four Sigmatic instant coffee is that you get like a balanced stimulation. So it's coffee without the jitters. The Lion's Mane sort of calms down the hit of caffeine. So that's why I really like this product. This has been used for a long time by Buddhist monks to help with focus during meditation. And this is just a beautiful mushroom and a modern day favorite for someone like me who likes to get creative, but also stay focused. And all of Four Sigmatic's mushrooms are dual extracted, meaning that you get the water soluble and fat soluble nutrients. And in non-geeky terms, that just means that they're really badass and that they do it right. So if you want to check it out, which I highly recommend you do, here's what's up. You go to foursigmatic.com/Luke Story. Again, that's foursigmatic.com/Luke Story. If you throw some of that Lion's Mane coffee in your shopping cart and then enter the code Luke Story, you're also going to save 15% off. That's foursigmatic.com/Luke Story. Your discount code is also Luke Story. Enjoy. And now back to the interview. Well, when you're talking about the voltage, I mean, subjectively, the experience of sitting in front of this thing, there is a lot of energy coming off that. I mean, my eyes kind of flutter and, you do this great parlor trick, which is better to see than explain. But essentially, one of your crew will take a small fluorescent bulb and just hold it near the device and the freaking thing lights up, or you can keep your hand within close proximity to the device and hold the bulb in the other hand and it will light up. I mean, it's insane, like the amount of voltage coming out of that thing. Going back to the Rife piece, what would be the limitation of like where he left off? Because he was doing work with people with cancer, and of course Rife machines have been used for all sorts of different things, from Lyme to parasites, and there's definitely something to the Rife thing. But it seems like a lot of the devices that came after his work have kind of hit a wall or a ceiling, I guess you could say, in terms of their capacity to really deliver that energy. So can you give us a little more on Rife's work and how that's been, currently kind of developed into something further?
Yeah, so originally with Rife, he was using a powerful radio transmitter, 500 to 700 watts of energy on the antenna. Many of these new devices that are popping out, they're not very strong as compared to that type of energy. They may be getting a couple hundred watts on the antenna at best. Some reports even went up to 800 to 900 watts with Rife in his devices. With the Biocharger, we sort of modified what Rife was actually doing. Rife was using a shortwave radio as its carrier wave. We replaced it with the Tesla coil as its carrier wave. And the advantage of that is we're able to get more power into the antenna. So having more power in the antenna gives you a much wider spectrum of frequencies and harmonics, which I think is one of the things that some of the devices that are out today that are utilizing the Rife machines are lacking. The other thing it's really lacking is by not using a Tesla coil, they don't get that high voltage potential that's required to leak that energy into the cell, through the cell membrane wall to charge that ATP up. And if you don't have sufficient voltage, you only have the effect of resonance. You're only having the effect of, okay, I hit a tuning fork and through sympathetic vibration, I got another one vibrating, but you're not really transmitting voltage into it. So I believe that's one of the things that they really left off on the Rife machine that you have. And also, a lot of them just experiment with the one narrow range of spectrum of tubes that Rife was actually using all the different gases at one point. He selected the helium at the end mainly because of its reliability as far as the gas doesn't break down as much on the electrodes and stuff. But he experienced similar results with all the different gases. So I look at it as, in nature, we're not in a very narrow band of spectrum of frequencies. We just don't have one type of gas that's up in the atmosphere that's giving us our visible light, but it's actually a full range of different gases that are up there. So I think that's another part of it that they're missing. And then finally, with the traditional Rife machine, you don't get that magnetic field from it. The beauty of a Tesla coil is you have a magnetic field, or the PMF type systems are similar, like the amp coil or the some of these other devices that are out there that are using the pulse electromagnetic fields. But 90 degrees out of phase, now we have an electric field and harmonics and frequencies. And having all four of those types of energies simultaneously, I think, is a much better approach than even what Rife was doing, where he was just utilizing that shortwave radio that didn't give you the voltage, didn't give you the magnetic fields, and quite frankly, a very narrow band in a visible light spectrum.
Right. So I guess that's where it comes in handy that some of these technologies are older, but you can see where they sort of left off or died or just hit the ceiling on their level of understanding, or maybe they weren't able to get outside of their own work enough to go, oh, hey, this other guy over here in Germany's doing something. Let me patch that together. But in hindsight, someone like you guys can come along and be like, cool, all these things work independently to a degree. What if we just kind of combine them then?
Yeah.
All right, that's cool. Yeah, and I have to say too, just I've not had a lot of experience with traditional Rife machines. The last time I did, it was like 1980s PC computer, basically connected to these two vials of gases that you would hold in your hands, and then you had to look up what frequencies you wanted to program. I mean, you had to be very sort of computer literate, 1980s PC computer literate to even work the thing. It was very confusing and keeping track of the recipes and all that. And so it was I think a friend of mine who had chronic fatigue or something, she would rent one, and I used it a few times, but I was like, you really need a practitioner to run it for you. It's not very easy, especially if you're an ill person. It's not very easy to figure out how to use, even if you had a manual. You actually just have to program all this stuff in. So I thought that was kind of a limitation in that too. So we covered kind of the difference in some of those types of devices that just use light. And I get that. I think that makes perfect sense because that's just one element of what you guys are doing. I know that I'm going to get questions about the differences. You mentioned, the Beamer and the MRS to whatever.
Yeah,
and those are those pads you lay on, and they don't have any of the frequencies. They just have the magnetic field, right? And then what I found interesting about the amp coil when it came out, and I have one, I use it, I love it. My mom's got one for a minute now. She's working on her Lyme. But they did a similar kind of thing where they combined the frequency element and then a PMF delivery. But I know I'm going to get questions again from people like, what's the difference? And I won't be able to explain it. So can you guys give a general idea of, just a comparison of kind of the different features so people understand that?
Yeah, so traditionally with the amp coils, basically, if you look at it from a Tesla coil point of view, they basically removed the secondary coil. So all they're working with is that magnetic field. So internally in any Tesla coil, you have this magnetic field that gets converted into electric field. So what they're working with is strictly that magnetic field that they can change that pulse frequencies. And, they have worked well in the past. There's definitely been consistency on results that they're seeing, but they don't have that electric field that's 90 degrees out of phase with it that gives you that high voltage. They may be able to generate some frequencies and harmonics because of the way in which they're generating their pulse frequencies, but it's very limited. I think they only go up to 10,000 hertz maybe on how they can do their pulsing. So there is some limitations on that. Plus, they don't have the visible light component, and I'm not sure what power level they are operating at it, but I would definitely believe that we're as strong or stronger than what they are actually producing. But not to downgrade what they're actually doing, because there has been proof that stuff's working, but they're missing the high voltage. They're missing the visible light component, and they do generate some frequencies and harmonics, but not near like what you would with the Tesla coil when you have a higher carrier wave. When you have a carrier wave that you're working with, and you can begin to change those harmonics and frequencies. It's much more powerful than what I think that they're able to actually accomplish.
Cool. All right. That makes perfect sense. Thanks for clearing that up and saving me from trying to answer it. That's a lot. So I'm curious, have you guys done any testing in terms of checking people's HRV or doing live blood cell analysis or any sort of quantitative studies where you can see, okay, their biology said this, and then it said this as a result of use?
Yeah, I've seen stuff with HRV. We did the HRV work early on with the definitely dark field microscopy. We've had plenty of clients that have used the BioCharger that have done the dark field microscopy and could see clearly the differences and the more activity in the blood. They seem to be more active, and the things that aren't supposed to be there aren't there. The collusions where things are clumped and they tend to not to be clumped up as much. And actually, on an earlier version, I went down and visited Gaston Naissance, who was really one of the pioneers back in the 60s and 70s that was first doing dark field microscopy. But I met him in, I believe, in the mid 90s or something. And he had a 50,000 microscope that we looked at underneath there. And we saw things that he'd never seen before. So he had a big theory about somatids. And these somatids were these little light particles that were floating around. And you could only see it at the high magnifications. And one of the things that we saw was a lot more somatids, a lot more activity within that. And then he also would see inclusions in this high magnification. And in his experience over time, he would have success with maybe causing some of this less inclusions that you would see on the screens. We were literally watching them pop off the screen. He'd never seen anything like that. So from that type of perspective, we had people do variable heart rate variability testing that they've done. We've seen definitely differences in before and afters. So a lot of that alternative stuff we have seen and done testing with various people doing that and definitely seen positive results.
Yeah, there's a couple others, and one of them is right here. We actually have one of our clients who's done just some amazing work with her clients. She's got a clinic up in a little south of Chicago. She uses a product called the Zyto, and it's for biofeedback. And it's really, there are other class of products like that out there, but it's basically biofeedback. And some use galvanic skin testing, some use heart rate variability. Others use a combination. So there's, kind of an emerging market and more credibility now with that. But we've seen, and I've kind of been, black and white, never really, it's hard for me to imagine quantum healing and things until I've seen what she's been able to do. And we invited her here. She actually, I would never burn my credibility with Tony for anything ever. And last summer, I was so impressed with what I saw that she was able to do is that I got in touch with them and we went down and actually used this and brought Marilyn down. He worked with Tony and Sage, and she worked with Tony and Sage, and it was just amazing. And so we brought her here, and she's doing that. So there's definitely before and after testing that you can do. One that I've seen pretty recently, and it's a pretty credible form of testing. It's called phase cycle microscopy. And again, they're taking photos of live blood cells, and we were able to do them before and after. And it was actually a chiropractor who was showing me how it worked, and he said, "Let's do it. We do it before and after." He had seen a difference between before and after one biocharger session with his wife, and so he wanted to see. He'd never used it before. He wanted to see what it looked like. He said, "Do you want to do it as well?" And I said, "Sure, absolutely." So, we took tests before, and we looked at our blood. And first off, he eats clean, takes great care of himself, and you could see, he pointed out to me that, he had some nice oscillation in the cells itself. He had some what he called stacking or coagulation, but he said that's very good. And he and I are roughly the same age. And then he said, "And these are parasites." And I'm like, "Well, parasites?" He goes, "Oh yeah, everybody has parasites. This is nothing." And he looks at me, he goes, "Do you eat sushi?" And I go, "Yeah, pretty regularly." He goes, "Oh, you have parasites." But then he showed me, a little bit of oxidation and things, but basically in comparison to good and bad cells that he also showed me, examples, it was pretty high up on the scale. I mean, it looked pretty good. Then he took my test, and it was amazing. The oscillation was like twice, and there was almost no stacking.
You mean how the red blood cells are moving around?
They were all moving around at a much faster pace. There was almost no coagulation. He couldn't find a parasite, and he said there was, a couple times he went, "Oh, there's a no," and he spent like 10 minutes trying to find them. Then we did we each did a biocharger session, and there was no oxidation. So then we both did a biocharger session, and we put his blood up, and you could see an improvement right then and there, just in the oscillation and the reduction of stacking. You also saw the parasites, for whatever reason, were moving towards the outer side of the cells, and so there was definitely activity there. I don't know. I don't pretend to know. This isn't a medical device or what, but it was absolutely, had in his mind dramatically improved the look and behavior of his blood. We did mine again, and there was no difference. And I kind of looked over to him and I said, "Well, did you really expect there to be a difference? I do it 3 times a day." And by the way, I don't eat as well as you do. I do have a few cocktails. And he said, it's a good damn thing that biocharger's in your life. But anyway, so that's a bit anecdotal, but there are definitely techniques, and I think more and more people are starting to realize that there's very credible ways to, aside from how you feel subjectively, to show and demonstrate, an improvement.
I like those woo-woo diagnostic devices too. I went to a lady in New York. I interviewed her on the show, Jane Goldberg, and she's got a place called Lakhovsky Spa. And she's like old school health nut, and she had this device. It maybe been the same one you mentioned or something similar. I think it was from Russia. And I don't know, you put your finger on it or something, then it goes into the quantum field and comes back and says your kidneys are messed up or something. And sounds crazy, but then she gets results. Like she'll start working on people with whatever, feedback she got from the biofeedback, and then it changes as they work on that thing. So it's funny, but I love the I'm not like a super skeptical sciencey guy. I'm very much like intuitive and just use my own discretion, and I'm guided that way pretty well. But I like to see things like the live blood cell analysis. I did one on myself once where I got on a Magnetico sleep pad, this, magnet, and I still have it on my bed. I kind of forget about it, but they did my live blood. It's all clumped up. The red blood cells are all shrunken and weird looking. Lay on that stupid passive magnetic field for 15 minutes, prick the blood again, and it's like moving beautifully. There's no shit sticking to each other. I was like, wow, it's so weird. And that's not even it's like 10 Gauss, I think, those pads or something.
Sure.
So I like seeing that. And the people that are skeptical of things that their doctor doesn't tell them about, at Cedars-Sinai or whatever, they like to see that stuff too, and I love quantifying my sleep. So I'd be interested to see, if I run the Theta sleep program or recipe,
absolutely.
Then I have my Aura ring here where I like monitor my behavior and things like that. And I'm gamified my sleep. So I'm using every device supplement, like, oh, can I get past a 93 tonight? I'm always like trying to get to a 98 or 99. So I think that's something that we're going to see a lot more of with these technologies, is that the users are going to have the ability to quantify the results themselves and do sort of layman scientific testing that's not just, oh, I feel better, which is so obviously subject to placebo, but, being able to do their testing.
One thing just to add that's kind of a cool new, kind of the next step there, is that in some of these other systems, they're able to actually, they have a database of terms and things like that, but now, with the Zyto, for example, and I have no vested interest in it, just I know that it works. They have all the recipes from the cloud for the biocharger loaded in that database.
Oh, nice.
So not only does it find where your body needs to focus, but there's now a scan that you do that tells you exactly what recipe to use for you personally. And as much as we have very specific recipes for different desired outcomes, that quantum thing, we don't argue with it. It might say this is perfect for alopecia and it's for somebody with a muscle injury or something like that. But you just kind of have to turn it over and trust it. But I've just seen it, and that's pretty amazing, because then you wind up with, the whole was greater than the sum of the parts.
What are some of the conditions that people will typically run recipes for with the biocharger? What kind of stuff are you guys? I know you can't make medical claims, and we always have to dance around that for legal things. But what kind of results are you seeing, or things like that?
Good question. So, just again, if you step back and say, okay, what we're doing is increasing your cellular voltage so that your body can reproduce new cells that work perfectly. It makes it a little easier to understand how it can have a positive effect, even though it's not a medical device or, a pill that you take or a needle or, no surgery required. Just a 15-minute session where you sit very comfortably in front of it. Sometimes it's hard to fathom that could make an impact. But it actually, the things, again, we're from the Northeast and Lyme is epidemic there. The top Lyme centers are now using the biocharger and getting amazing results. We have people that have, athletic athletes, and then a lot of post-athletes or, people that just want to keep their mojo and have had prior injuries. It really helps people with muscle or joint issues or, arthritis. My wife wouldn't love me to say this, but she's 51 and she has been struggling like many women her age with menopause. And she's found that now the biocharger has, and she resisted. She did not want to think that the biocharger could help where Western medicine could, or the opposite of that could help where Western medicine couldn't. She, tried everything, but had, migraines, night sweats, mind fog, and just, pretty dramatic. And she started using the biocharger. We don't talk about it. She just comes in the back of the office. We sometimes don't even talk. She'll go in and biocharge, but she does that religiously now. It's had a tremendous impact. We have, people with chronic disease that are of all types, pretty much, will find that they feel more energy and that they can get more movement. People that have been confined physically find that a lot of times they'll get range of motion or don't need to have, they can move around on their own. I mean, so we've seen just amazing results. And the best way to do that is look at our website and you can see some great testimonials or just talk to any of our customers.
Jim, Girard, we were talking earlier about the implications of consciousness and meditation and things like that. What can happen to brainwaves and your state in terms of consciousness and mood and things like that, playing with these frequencies and things that you've combined?
Well, that one's an interesting question from a guy who tends to be more technically minded than I maybe spiritually minded. But there are a lot of people who use the biocharger specifically for meditation. Deep breathing, there's plenty of people that are using it for Wim Hof. There's a Wim Hof breathing that really gets you into that centered state. And they're finding while you do the biocharger with it is a completely different dimension that they've ever been able to achieve without it. We do things with music and sound and things like that can help activate some of those centers that will, make your mind more open. We have a pineal gland recipe that helps open up that third eye.
Oh, nice.
So there's all sorts of different things,
my language.
different avenues that you could do with it. And from a spiritual point of view, as well as even from a healing point of view, it helps to have that right intention, whether you're thinking about just that peaceful state of bliss or nirvana, or you're thinking about a specific intention that, something that, some type of outcome that you'd like to have, whether it's, more movement, or I have a chronic condition I'd like to have not be there. Doing those visualization techniques that go along with using the biocharger just only enhances it. I mean, even just from the placebo effect, where you can take advantage of that placebo effect and have it to be used for your advantage instead of as a scientific term to discredit things that may or may not work. But let's use those positive thoughts and those beliefs within the structure of it to just really add to the benefit with it.
On the topic of working with the brain, are you able to dial in targeted brain waves? Like if I sit down and I'm like, wow, I want to meditate, can you induce or assist a theta state, for example?
Oh yeah, we have recipes that are called theta waves, alpha beta waves. Anything in that brainwave activity, 7 to 34 to 7 to up to 80 hertz, I think is up for theta wave. Any of those recipes, I absolutely love. But what's the beauty of the BioCharger is you can work on so many different avenues with it. You can do the low frequency pulses, all the brainwave stuff. You can do Schumann resonance. You can do sound therapy. You can do Rife stuff. You can do magnetic field pulsing. You can do all sorts of chakras, music.
Oh, right, right.
One of the things that we haven't released yet, but in all the BioChargers, and I'm a huge fan, is the music. To me, the music and the melody is a whole new dimension. It's just going to really open up, and I'm looking forward to releasing that next year, where we can play that music, play the Mozart, hear the sound, hear the instruments, hear the opera lady singing, where it begins to draw now the emotional component, not just the archaic frequency response like a machine, but have them drawing that emotion through music. I think is going to be a whole new dynamic, whether it's through positive affirmations. So you could do things like chants, Gregorian chants that actually have that sound and music playing, or Mozart's Healing Symphony, if you want to play that, where the harmonics and frequencies will follow the melody of the music. To me, that's extremely powerful when it comes to...
I like that idea.
Yeah.
That's insane. So you could get them to sync up?
Yeah, so they're all synced up. So literally with the BioCharger, the Corona discharge will play music. It just pushes the air like a speaker, and you will hear the sounds. Like, for instance, I do a prime up with Tony Robbins. I have a videotape or a video that I pulled up, and I run it through the BioCharger. And the sounds coming from the Corona discharge, you hear all the voices. So some of those primings where he's doing it with the tens of thousands of people that are there, you hear the voices and the energy behind that. And the voice and the frequency of Tony speaking, not only you hear it as the sound, but it's anchoring it into those harmonics that follow all the way up through AM, FM, the sounds that we can't even hear, shortwave, longwave, UHF, VHF, they're all following that same and anchoring that same sound. You can do things like positive affirmations and things like that. Those are extremely powerful things. And that's really the future that we were looking at. So when we looked at that design and what would Tesla do in the 21st century, we wanted to add all the features that we could within that BioCharger when we made this final design here, that we wanted to look what are all the possibilities, and that was one of them that we included. And we have all the hardware in place, and we got the software working on it. Now we're just a matter of just figuring out how to lay it out, because there's a lot of hoops that we'll have to go through.
That's very cool, thinking about sending those different frequencies at a cellular level, like cellular music. That's deep. That's cool, man. That's cool.
It's another huge. It's another huge differentiation, because we're continually enhancing the BioCharger, but because everyone's connected around the world and through the cloud, we're able to continue to enhance the software. But also, as Jim mentioned, and it's a little bit of an early Christmas present for all the customers that already have BioChargers, to know that we have the audio modulation software or hardware, as well as an optical port already on the BioCharger. And within a few weeks, they'll be able to take full advantage of the capability. So
wow.
That's a little gift for our clients, and we continue to enhance it. So most systems, you get what you get, and they degrade over time. The BioCharger continues to improve over time.
That's cool. Yeah, someone was asking me about that earlier inside, and I said, well, the hardware is what it is, but you're going to update the software all the time. I mean, that's the age we live in, which is cool. I mean, can you imagine Tesla right now seeing the capacity we have to do that? Like, what you can do with software is insane. I had one sort of nerdy question for you, Jim Girard, that I wanted to ask, somewhat related and not, and it was about grounding. People are really into earthing, and you, Jim Law, talked about, we're wearing insulated footwear now for however many years we've been doing it, and we're not connected. I use my Earth Runners grounded sandals here. They've got a copper peg on the bottom and conductive thread, so I'm grounded anytime the ground's grounded. But I've interviewed a lot of really smart people about these grounding pads and sheets and things like that. And I'm like, I get a 50-50 response in terms of the health benefits. Some will say, dude, if you're sitting in a sauna that's got electric fields coming off it, which most do, the clear lights that I use is one of the lowest, but say you're sitting in a sauna or you're sitting in front of your computer, really high EMF field, that if you're grounded, now these electrical fields that some would say are not beneficial to us, the 60 hertz or whatever's going through your house wiring, is now looking for a ground. It's using you as a ground, and you're getting zapped even more than if you weren't grounded. Okay, that's one school of thought. So grounding's bad around technology. And then the grounding fans say, oh no, the ground frequency or whatever it is from the earth is pushing everything away from you because you're grounded and you're actually shielding yourself from the effects of those fields. Therefore, grounding indoors using technology is good for you. Do you have any thoughts on that? Because this is something I just can't get to the bottom of. And to me, intuitively, I'm just like, in nature, I don't care what's going on in the atmosphere, we would always be grounded. Every living creature on the planet is grounded 24/7 unless they're a fucking bird flying around.
Sure.
Right?
Well, the thing
so that's what I do. I just ground all the time, but then some people tell me it's a bad idea.
Well, this is a good question because I've never really thought about this one before. But grounded, like you're talking about, where you have the grounded copper wire under your feet and you're trying to make a contact with the ground, I could see how that would be beneficial, definitely. But the idea of shielding it and building a big antenna where you have like a tent that you get in. Some people are really into like grounding the tent and getting it, the Faraday cage and get into it. I think that's a completely different beast when it comes to restricting that energy. I mean, that's part of the reasons why I don't think we're as healthy as we are today, because we live in what I consider tents in our buildings that we live, the high rises that have the concrete and rebar that's in there that's basically shielding us from all that energy. So I think that there's an aspect of grounding that would probably be good because you are making that connection to the earth. But the idea of shielding myself from all the electromagnetic energy, I don't think it's that bad. And then furthermore, if you want to talk about the EMF in general, there's this whole school of thought of what is actually happening. Some people believe cell phones are bad, microwaves are bad, power lines are bad, anything with frequencies are bad. But I started to delve into that question and just trying to understand what is it that is all about. And when I started looking into it, first I looked at the World Health Organization. They looked at it and said, no problems with it. Low-level electromagnetic fields, no problems with cancer or anything. Doesn't affect brain waves. There was research in Europe that looked at 40,000 different studies that were some good, some bad, that saying there might be a problem with the EMF fields and stuff. And they've all concluded that there is really no negative effects of the right levels of energy of the EMF field. Granted, I wouldn't stick my head in a microwave and expect to be getting any type of benefit, but having microwaves coming from cosmic energy, or enough of a microwave that the FCC says that that's operating within a safe range, probably going to be beneficial for you. So I don't come from the school of thoughts that these EMF fields are actually that bad. And I also look at it, you could say the conspiracy BS of, that's phone companies saying, screw you, it's not bad. And, but in reality, it is bad. But then I look at the 7 billion cell phone use that's on the planet, of 366 million there in the United States alone. Cell phones, you would think that you would see this massive curve of disease if in fact they were truly that bad, especially for the amount of use that everyone has. So I don't see the evidence that supports that they're necessarily bad as long as they're operating within that safe level. And one of the things that the biocharger that we looked at was to make sure we are FCC compliant. So we looked at all those fields that the FDA or the FCC has looked at to determine what are power levels, what's that safe level. We're operating all well within that range or below that range.
You're the only guy that seems to be of a relatively high IQ that doesn't think that EMFs and 5G and smart meters and all this stuff are really bad for you. That's when we were talking about that the day. I was like, this guy seems really smart, but with all due respect, you're the single person that's like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't see the proof.
Well, the World Health Organization does. I mean, 40 other countries that are saying it's usually that guy that pulls up that one single study that has one single endpoint that they identified, where this lady said, well, I think it was the EMF that caused all my problems in my life, so therefore that's what it is. But when they started to really look at all that data, there isn't nothing there. And even when I went to a convention in the late 90s in Italy, it was a bioelectromagnetic convention. There were thousands of research papers presented, and even back then, nobody was pointing at anything like that. So I think that it was partly driven by the guys that are selling the little shield things that may or may not work,
right.
that are driving some of that
Well, the
BS.
same. That's why the original point of my question, like with the grounding thing, most of the people that tell you how amazing these little pads are and the sheets are and stuff are the people selling it. And then I talk to your average electrician or someone that understands these kind of principles, and they say, "Oh no, you're making it worse by grounding and stuff." But there are a lot of conflicting ideas, and I would say I definitely lean on the more paranoid side, and I don't trust government agencies.
Yeah.
I mean, the CDC doesn't test the safety of vaccines when they should be, so when it comes to anything with a acronym,
sure.
an acronym government agency, I'm like, they're evil, they're satanic, they're trying to kill me. That's kind of my inherent life view, which could probably use some readjusting. But I liked talking to you because I'm like, God, maybe I can relax a little bit about having my cell phone near me. And probably the neurosis of trying to hide from EMFs all the time could make me sicker than just saying fuck it and just sitting next to a smart meter.
Well,
I don't know.
So I look at it two things. Like I said before, the cell phones. I mean, for as many uses, we would be seeing a huge curve. But we also have this million years of data from the universe. So the universe has been giving us that whole spectrum, the microwaves, the short waves, long waves, you name it, AM, FM, all the spectrum. And life did not die. Life flourished as a result of that. So I don't really see it. And then when you look at our bodies are electrical, our brain waves are electrical. Everything is electrical in nature. And not to say you want to pump it up with the electrocution levels, but I mean the safe levels that has been established as guidelines. Not only are they not detrimental, but I have a feeling that they might be beneficial.
Damn. All right. Cool. Well, we're going to be chewing on that one because someone just sent me a picture of in Scottsdale of where they put up one of these new 5G towers and they make it look like a palm tree, so it's not an eyesore. And there's two real palm trees right next to it. And after a few weeks of that tower being there, the palm trees were dead. So, I look at stuff like that. I'm like, what are did it get some weird beetle or something? But
sure.
I don't know. But I do like the idea of taking a little more balanced, relaxed view of the whole thing, especially things that you can't control, which is one of the big takeaways, as I said, from this whole event. So I think that's it, guys. I think we've covered what I wanted to cover. Again, I really appreciate you guys taking the time. I know you've got a lot going on here. I've got a lot going on. I'm hoping I didn't just miss the lesson that's like, and here's how you change your life. Yeah. I'll have to be taking notes from my neighbors in there if I missed anything. The last question I have for you, and I always ask the same question, is you guys have both taught me a lot today, and you've taught our listeners a lot. Who have been 3 teachers or teachings that you might point our listeners to go check out, someone they could read up on or study, or someone's just influenced you in your life's work or mission?
I would say Dr. Jerry Tennant has made a huge impact on me trying to understand more about how the body works, and that, he has a great way of distilling very complicated information into terms that we can understand. There's some great videos and things out there. There's a great interview by Dr. Mercola interviewing Dr. Tennant. He has a book called, I think I mentioned it earlier, Voltage is Healing. And I would, recommend taking a look at that. He's a pretty amazing guy.
Cool. That's only one, though.
That's all right. So I have to say that Tony Robbins has had a huge impact. 26 years ago this month, I attended my first Date with Destiny, which was back then there were under 100 people. There's 5,000 people here. It absolutely changed my life. And, he's continues. It just amazes me at how much it's helped me personally. But when I watch now thousands of people that he's impacting and having gotten a chance to know him a little more personally, he's the real deal. He is all about love and giving. I've never seen a better example of it than I have from him. And I'd have to say, going back, a crew coach of mine in college, that, there are defining moments in our life. And I'll never forget him, helping convince me that I needed to commit more and what would happen if I did. That again, was one of those defining moments. His name's John Hennon. And someday I'm going to go down and visit that guy and do something very special for him.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Yeah, I have one adult from my boarding school. I did that very thing. I looked, one day I was like, what if that guy's still around? And I stalked online, and I dug, and he had ended up working at some other boarding school back east, and got in touch with him, and I went and had lunch with him. It was a very meaningful experience that I kind of forgotten about. So yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. And I like when people, I'm someone that likes to give credit where credit's due, and there are those pivotal moments in life, especially when you're younger, and if you're a young person like me that didn't appreciate a lot of the adults around, and a good one comes along that really has got your back, that's great. Thanks for reminding me. And then how about you, Jim Girard?
Well, I have a tie for the first, which would be Tesla and my old man.
Oh, cool. Cool. Awesome.
So, yeah. And then, anything on Tesla that you want to read, I mean, from the Problem of Increased Human Energy, which is a really good autobiography that he wrote on, what he thought of, what he was actually thinking of. But there's not many books that are actually autobiographies. But any of his patents books, anything you can find on Tesla, I think is just completely fascinating. Movies that you find on him. I mean, really, the guy's life is just extraordinary. And then George Lakhovsky's Secret of Life. It's Lakhovsky. He was a Russian scientist in the 30s and 40s. And it's a really good book on some fundamental understanding of the electrical side of nature and how he discovered it, how he proved it, and a lot of his theories. And that was a big moment for me in my life, is when I read The Secret of Life.
And was he the inventor of the multi-wave oscillator?
Yes, he was.
Yeah, which you guys, I forgot to kind of mention that, but you've incorporated that into the BioCharger as well. All right, cool. So a couple of years were easy to guess, based on knowing the origins of some of this technology. Well, in closing, guys, where can people find y'all and what you do, website, social media, anything you want to give a shout out to? And well, of course, you guys put those in the show notes, which you can find at by going to lukestory.com/newsletter, and I'll send you the notes and all of these links for everything we always talk about every week. What's your site and social?
So, biocharger.com. For Instagram, Biocharger NG. We have a YouTube channel, Biocharger NG, and hashtag Biocharger NG for Twitter.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you guys definitely go on to YouTube and check them out too, because this is one of those things you've got to see to believe. I mean, there's sparks flying off it. You touch it, it electrocutes you. I mean, it's next level shit. So definitely something you want to get a video component of. And I think that's it, guys. Thanks so much, and let's get back to work. Well, wham, bam, thank you, ma'am. Hot damn, we made it through episode number 195 of the Lifestylist Podcast. We're creeping up on number 200. I can't believe I've had that many goddamn conversations. It's just insane. This Friday, I'm dropping a bonus bootleg broadcast episode, The Ultimate Morning Routine, your pal Luke Story live at the Neil Strauss Society Biohacking Intensive. That's a bonus show this Friday. Then Tuesday, we've got Beast Mode, Badass Bones and Massive Muscles with Dr. John Jaquish, number 197. If you're someone who's into fitness and into bone density, bone health, and building massive muscles, dude and dudettes, you got to check out John. John is very, opinionated, controversial, and knows his shit. He's a PhD, and he understands what makes you strong, straight up. If you look at this dude, he is like a goddamn Sasquatch. John Jaquish, Sasquatch? There might be a connection there. Amazing guy, brilliant, super funny, and has some really powerful myth busting in fitness. That's the word I was looking for. So if you want to catch Friday's show and Tuesday's show and every show that comes after that, please just subscribe. Do me and yourself a favor. Now listen, a little inside baseball here. Even if you don't listen to every single episode in its entirety, which by the way, of course, I highly recommend, it really helps my download numbers if you subscribe to the show. Now, if you listen to podcasts, you always hear people begging and pleading for reviews and ratings and all that. That's cool if you want to do that. It's hard to get people to do that shit, but you can pretty easily, guys, just reach down on your device or computer there and click subscribe. One click and you'll be subscribed to the Lifestylist Podcast forever. Because I hope to do this show forever. I have so much fun. And, that way you won't ever miss a show and I'll get 1 million just freaking downloads a month and we'll live happily ever after. I'll dethrone Joe Rogan and Tim Ferriss someday. No, probably not, but it would be nice. Not dethrone. Join the ranks. There. Don't have to be in that egoic competitive mindset now, do we? But really, F those guys. I'm going to beat them. Anyway, what else do I have to tell you? Yes. This week's sponsors. We've got Joovv. Go to joovv.com/Luke. That's JOOVV.com. Joovv.com. Enter the code Luke at checkout, and they're going to send you a special little gift, which is a surprise. And speaking of Joovv, right as we speak, and I shit you not, I've got my Joovv Go, which is this little mini rechargeable battery-powered device. And that one you can use on different parts of your body. It's insane. So I just keep it around, and anytime I'm meditating or recording or working on my computer and I don't have time to go to the full stand-up Joovv and do my whole body, I'll just kind of do spot red light therapy where it counts. You know what I'm saying? Next up, we've got Beekeepers Naturals, and you can go to beekeepersnaturals.com, use the code LifeStylist, and save 15% off on what? On quite literally the most potent, most clean, ultimate organic, legit, non-GMO, glyphosate, pesticide-free bee products on the planet. That's beekeepersnaturals.com. Their CEO, Carly, was on the show a few episodes. The world of bees is fascinating, by the way. You should go back and check that one out. But definitely go to beekeepersnaturals.com, use the code LifeStylist, and save 15%. And then we've got Four Sigmatic. Go to foursigmatic.com/Luke Story. Use the code Luke Story and save 15% off the following amazing items. You can get chaga mushroom extract, reishi mushroom, lion's mane, cordyceps. They've got hot cocoa. They've got a chai mix. They've got a matcha mix. They have all the hot drinks. You need all the drinks, man. That's how you do it. They also have a really great instant coffee, which is dope. I love to use those when I'm traveling. I don't always have time to rock the glass or stainless steel French press and the grinder and do the whole coffee rigmarole. So I'll throw some grass-fed butter in with my Four Sigmatic coffee, a couple mushroom powder packets, and I am good to go. In fact, I had that this morning with my lady friend. Brought her coffee in bed because sometimes I'm that good of a guy, sometimes not. But anyway, today I didn't use the usual blend that this young lady prefers. I snuck in 2 packets of the Four Sigmatic reishi mushroom powder, and I didn't say shit. Handed her the coffee. I kid you not, 4 hours later, we're out doing some shopping, running around town. She was getting some organic makeup from Detox Market because I told her we weren't going to kiss because her lipstick had lead in it. That was like day 1. So we're running some errands, and she's like, dude, that coffee was amazing. Whatever that recipe was, I have so much energy. I feel great. What did you do today? And I said, I'm not telling. No, I told her it's the Four Sigmatic. So go to foursigmatic.com/Luke Story and hook it up. These things are great to add to your coffee. I'm just a huge fan. And I'm a huge fan of every single sponsor of the show. And I would love for you to be a huge fan too. Now, I know many people probably don't make it to the outro of the show where I do all these plugs and just kind of loosen up a little bit and have some fun. But if you're listening to this, that means you're a super fan of the show, and I appreciate you so much. And the brands that support the show make it possible for me to do this instead of going and doing something else for a living. So I'd appreciate if you supported the brands. And of course, I'm always going to push for a good discount for you. And I'm always going to vet the best of the best when it comes to biohacking, tech, supplements, herbs, whatever it is that I happen to be slanging on the show. So it helps you, it helps me, and it helps the brands. It's a trifecta, triple win. Listen, I got to go. I got things to do, guys. I'm out. So I will catch you this Friday, virtually that is, for the ultimate morning routine. Make sure you subscribe to the show so you don't miss that episode or any episode of the Lifestylist podcast to follow. And as always, share this one with a friend. Don't forget to visit biocharger.com/Luke to learn everything you could possibly want to know about this amazing technology, and also save $500 off your order by using the code Luke at checkout. That's biocharger.com/Luke. Use the code Luke to save $500. This episode of the Lifestylist podcast was produced by podcastmasters.net.